It's easy to praise the great twists in cinema, with something like The Sixth Sense, where it turns out that, yeah, we all know, some of the great twists that get overlooked come from television. Picture for a second that The Sixth Sense was actually a TV show. The big twist would come at the end of the pilot, but then they'd have to keep the narrative flowing and turning for 6 or 7 seasons to come. Maybe Malcolm Crowe will go to a psychic and learn how to return to his physical form. Hell, at some point in season 3, the writers will probably send some sort of Ghostbuster after him. So, in praise of the great twists in recent television history, let's have a look at some of the biggest TV talking points of recent years. I'm Rich from Whatculture.com, and these are 10 awesome TV twists you never saw coming. Big spoilers ahead. Proceed at your own risk. Don't say, I didn't warn you. Number 10. God wants Sam to keep working for the devil. Reaper. Reaper is one of those tragically cancelled television shows hosted on the CW. Sam is a character who discovers on his 21st birthday that his parents sold his soul to the devil, and that he will be charged with working as the devil's bounty hunter, recapturing Hell's escaped souls until the time he died. This didn't appeal much to a guy whose priorities seemed to be nothing but bedding his co-worker, so Sam spends most of the series trying to find a loophole in his contract to get out of the deal. Sam ends up challenging the devil, Charlie Daniels style, to a game of quarters, the winner leaving with the control of Sam's soul. Things seem to be going great for Sam until an angel comes down from heaven and breaks Sam's wrist, telling him that God has a plan for him. It was actually pretty intriguing when placed in context, but the show was promptly cancelled after this episode aired, so we never truly got to see the fallout from this divine intervention. Number 9. Nathan is Claire's dad. Heroes. Heroes is what happens if people with superpowers actually existed in modern day society and had about 2 characters that didn't want to make you drown something. Heroes didn't have many narrative twists, opting instead to just work with catchphrases, but it did have 1 or 2 shockers in its time. It turns out that Nathan, the show's flying politician that no one likes, was the father of Claire, the titular cheerleader of Save the Cheerleader, Save the World. That doesn't sound like much, but that was huge news back in the day. The twist never really amounted to an awful lot besides Claire throwing a brick at Nathan's car once, but boy oh boy, when we found out who it was on the end of that phone, we all gasped at once and then cried ourselves to sleep for the next 4 years. Number 8. Philip kidnaps Amador. The Americans. Odds are you don't watch The Americans, which means you're missing out on one hell of a series. The Americans takes place in the 1980s, when the Cold War was getting hot and stars 2 Russian sleeper agents masquerading as Americans, trying to take down the country from within. With a premise like that, it was only a matter of time before one of our agents kidnapped an FBI agent. Too bad it didn't happen on purpose. While deep undercover as the fiancé of a woman who could inadvertently give the Russian high command some privileged information, Philip runs afoul of her ex-boyfriend, a lonesome FBI agent named Amador. Trying to avoid suspicion, Philip opts to stab the man and put him in his trunk. Things spiral even more out of control from that point, and the show promptly turned into something you absolutely need to be watching. Number 7. A wild German appears. Orphan Black. Orphan Black is a show airing on BBC America that you probably didn't hear about until that TV guy you know was really pissed that its lead actress wasn't nominated for an Emmy. Star Tatiana Maslany plays numerous characters on the show, all with varying accents, mannerisms and personalities, but it's the original revelation of where all these characters came from that earns a spot on this list. Maslany Sarah sees a woman who looks exactly like her jump in front of a train and slowly tries to unravel both what she'd witnessed and forge a better life for herself and her foster brother. Suddenly, at the tail end of the pilot episode, a German woman who looks exactly like Sarah appears, pleading for her help right before being killed by an unseen sniper. Sarah manages to escape, but not before the show makes a hard left turn into science fiction. There is no earthly way anyone could have predicted this twist, and there's no way that anyone can deny that Tatiana Maslany totally should have gotten that Emmy. Number 6. Mags Bennett kills herself. Justified. Justified is a show in keeping with FX's tradition of being the best network on television. Following the adventures of damaged and ruggedly handsome US Marshal Raylan Givens, Justified began as a standard crime procedural, but became so much more. Each season showcases a new big bad guy, each more formidable than the last, but none more memorable than Mags Bennett. Mags was a loving mother of 2, a small business owner, and the operator of an expansive criminal empire. She was also renowned for her apple pie, an alcoholic drink that tasted remarkably like that most American of treats. The pie actually ended up being Mag's undoing, as she was more keen on poisoning herself than she was on serving any meaningful time in jail. You do you, Mags. You do you. Number 5. George Michael is sleeping with his dad's girlfriend. Arrested Development. George Michael Bluth was a timid, easily pushed over, skinny young man, making him the perfect person to be played by Michael Cera. So it came as a complete surprise to everyone when it turned out that he was sleeping with his father's girlfriend, Rebel Ali. This happened very late in the game of the Netflix exclusive Season 4, which means that many of you either didn't see it or were absolutely disappointed long before you reached that point. It's a very important plot point, one that will hopefully be resolved when Season 5 comes out in 20 years or so. Number 4. Brody doesn't blow up everybody. Homeland. If you've seen Season 1 of Homeland, you might have been very disappointed by Season 2. Given that, you must have been very concerned when it looked as if former prisoner of war and current terrorist Nicholas Brody was going to carry out a terrorist attack by detonating an explosive vest in a confined space, in the vicinity of various high-ranking officials, including the Vice President of the United States. However, Brody suddenly doesn't carry out the attack. It was actually Brody's much-loathed daughter Dana that ended up saving his life, calling him in his moment of need to check up on him and make sure that he's okay. Not wanting his daughter to hear him kill a load of people, Brody abandons his pursuit and opts to, instead, not blow up a bunch of people. It was good news for the series, as it not only kept Damian Lewis's character alive, it also set the next 2 series of the show in motion. Number 3. John Locke is dead. Lost. Lost was never very forthcoming with crucial information. If your trousers were on fire, Lost would probably have let you know, but may have taken them a year or 2 to finally give you all the necessary information. One tasty tidbit it did manage to give us after implementing flash forwards when it realised everyone was getting kinda tired of its crap was that sometime in the future, John Locke would die, and that would prompt Jack and other members of the Oceanic Six to have to go back to the island for reasons I don't have time to fully explain. This was a large surprise to die-hard Lost fans, as no one particularly wanted Locke to die, or could imagine how the show could possibly go on without Jack and Locke yelling at each other all the time. Number 2. Walter watches Jane die. Breaking Bad. Walter White is a bit of a bastard. This is well established early into Breaking Bad. There are many ghosts floating around the general Albuquerque area who can testify to exactly that, but never was he more of an absolute ponce than when he sat by and just watched the girlfriend of his partner Jesse die, choking on her own vomit as a result of a drug overdose. He simply stood there in dumbfounded villainy as some poor pretty landlady died so that he could better manipulate our adorable Jesse Pinkman. Walter had caused more than his share of deaths by this point in the series, but those people were usually armed and involved with getting folks hooked on meth in some capacity. Jane was just trying to rent out apartments. And number 1, The Red Wedding, Game of Thrones. Yes, it's the obvious choice for this list, but it's also the correct one. There is almost no way as an internet-utilising human being you haven't had this, or at least some other major Game of Thrones spoiler, undone for you by the general overreacting public. But that doesn't lessen the fact that The Red Wedding surprised the ever-loving crap out of everyone that hadn't already read the books, the smug gits. For the uninformed, The Red Wedding was an occasion where every Game of Thrones fan got together and cried an abundance of tears as most of the remaining members of the noble House Stark were cut down at what was supposed to be a pleasant event. A bloody, stabby, throat-slittingly shocking massacre, one that would go down in TV history. And that's our list. Any other unexpected twists your favourite TV shows threw at you? Leave them in the comments below and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. News, lists and articles await over at Whatculture.com, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter. I'm Rich from Whatculture, and I'll see you soon.
Most people click away now, but look at all this other entertainment here. Is it spherical?
It's square.
It's a square.
Rectangular.
Rectangular. Look at those right angles. Over here, circles?
Yeah.
Circles. Look at the circles. I don't think they're going to be where I'm putting my hands.